We'll follow in the footsteps of the great Sherlock Holmes and use deductive reasoning to arrive at the best day for your team to start a sprint. Each day of the week starts on equal footing, and we have 7 days to choose from. We'll start with the obvious non working days are out, as it would be hard to start a sprint if no one is actually at work. For most software development teams, Saturday and Sunday aren't an option. While we're on the topic of weekends, it would behoove us to consider sustainability and predictability. What's your team's propensity to treat the weekend as a buffer zone to finish those things that didn't get done in the sprint? If you enter the weekend with a pile of pending work and some unknown team member miraculously finishes by Monday morning, that's not the blessing you might think it is. According to the Agile Manifesto, Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. If you've got developers working all weekend that never take a break to decompress, that will come back to bite you. You might be inclined to think this only happens every now and then, or sometimes this is necessary, or even they could stop anytime they wanted to. But the unfortunate truth about most agile teams is that they use velocity as a planning metric. The amount of work you got done last sprint feeds into how much you'll plan for this sprint. Someone must have the courage to point out the problem in order to stop the vicious cycle. The best way to prevent workaholics and ensure your team gets the downtime they need is to avoid ending a sprint just before the weekend. And if we don't want our sprint to end on Fridays, they can't start on Mondays. You should also consider the timing of your deployments when you evaluate the best day to start a sprint. In each sprint, your Scrum team is working toward building one or more useful product increments. Generally speaking, this means that the team will likely need to do a release near the end of the sprint. If you've been working on software teams for very long, you'll be aware of a release that went completely sideways. Tying this back to our discussion on sustainability, we don't want the developers to be working all weekend to fix a botched release. Avoiding Friday releases goes a long way to preventing urgent weekend work. And if we don't want to release on Fridays, then we don't want to start our sprint on Mondays. You'll also want to keep sprint planning in mind while trying to help your team determine the best day to start their sprints. In sprint planning, your team determines what product backlog items get pulled into the sprint backlog and their plan for completing these items. This crucial meeting sets the tone and pace for the rest of the sprint. To maximize our chance of success, we want everyone in this meeting to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. We don't want our team members to be hungover from the weekend before, but we also don't want them distracted by their upcoming weekend plans. A prerequisite to an efficient sprint planning meeting is a refined backlog that is ranked to maximize value delivery. In my experience, holding the event on a Monday has the same side effect on the product owner as ending a sprint on Friday for developers. The product owner is inclined to work over the weekend to get the product backlog up to snuff. More commonly than not, those plans never came to fruition, and our Monday sprint planning meeting was fraught with confusion and waste as the product owner frantically refined the backlog during the meeting. I also caution against sprint planning on Thursday if you can avoid it. If sprint planning takes up most of your Thursday, then the only thing that separates your team from this exhausting event in the weekend is one day. And we all know that Fridays make better wind down days than they do ramp up days. Speaking of Fridays, aside from people being generally distracted by the upcoming weekend, there's one more reason to avoid sprint planning on this day. After a long weekend, your team won't remember half of what they discussed in sprint planning. It's better to distance the event from the weekend and give your team time for the plan to sink in. Let's take a moment to touch on the fact that the Scrum team should be involved in deciding when their sprint starts. By letting the Scrum team decide, you're giving them the autonomy to organize their work in the best way for them. They know their schedules, their workloads, and their constraints. And when they have control over when to start their sprint, they can plan and deliver with more focus and efficiency. Plus, it's also a great way to empower your team and build trust. When you trust your team to make important decisions, it shows that you value their expertise and you're willing to let them take ownership of their work. And that can go a long way in fostering a positive team culture and improving morale. I still believe the choice should be up to the team, even if they pick Monday. There are some legitimate reasons against Monday other than assuming everyone naturally adopts Garfield the cat's stance of hating Mondays. We all love a good vacation, right? But unfortunately, it means that employees often take a few extra days off to extend their weekends. And yep, you guessed it, Monday and Friday are the most popular vacation days. So if you start your sprint on Monday, you'll probably end up with a non zero portion of your team missing either the sprint planning event or the sprint review and retrospective. And let's be real, those meetings are hard enough without half your team being on a beach somewhere. Vacations aren't the only time team members will be absent from work. We all get sick sometimes. You might think that we can't predict which days will be sick days, but actually, a disproportionate amount of sick days occur on Mondays. It's almost like everyone's trying to extend their weekend by one more day. Come on, people. We see through your sick day shenanigans. Starting your sprint on a Monday probably isn't the best idea because some of your team will either be actually sick or faking it. And now on to the real scheduling nightmare. Most holidays occur on Monday, so you'll have to reschedule several sprint planning sessions if you start your sprint on Monday. Every now and then, we'll have to cram 2 days worth of meetings into one. The poor soul that's responsible for managing calendar invites typically has no other option than to double book people and hope for the best. I might be biased, but if you've ever felt like smacking a scheduler, I'd really like it if you considered smacking the like button instead. It helps this video reach more people so that they too can learn tactics to prevent violence against schedulers. Seriously though, this is a point against Mondays. Also, Tuesdays that follow a holiday are really just another Monday in disguise. Remember all those other points we already had against Monday? Well, those now also apply to some Tuesdays. The sprint review is another scheduling nightmare you may also need to contend with. For some teams, this is the hardest event to schedule due to external stakeholders. You might want to start by scheduling the sprint review and then working everything else around it. As much as it pains me to say this, there might be some benefit to having your sprint start with your work week. Everyone's already used to Mondays being a start day, and shifting away from this can cause some unwarranted confusion. So we'll count this as a point against every day except Monday. But I also encourage you and your teams to try something new. Just because that's how we've always done it, it isn't really a valid argument to keep doing it that way. We're left with a clear winner through this application of deductive reasoning. As a general rule of thumb, I recommend Scrum Teams start their sprints on a Wednesday, but as we discussed before, the ultimate decision should be up to the team. Once you get started, you'll likely find that the daily Scrum is the hardest event to master. Watch this next video to make the daily Scrum your team's most productive event.